Hey y'all, so we are nearing the end of August. We have about a week left here in August, and I decided that it is time to start my fall garden seeds. Now, if you go back and watch my previous video, I gave a lot of information on when I start, how I decide to start, and things like that. So this video is basically going to be what I finally decided as toward varieties and how I'm deciding that now is a good time to start. So it's been very hot outside. I would typically direct sow seeds or start my seeds inside. And I kind of told y'all that I was on the fence about deciding what to do. And so the last week has been exceptionally hot here, as I'm sure any of you who live here know. We've gotten lots of heat warnings, which means that it is way too hot for our fall seeds to germinate out in the garden. So what I'm worried about not starting them inside is that even in September, it might still be really hot by the time we get there, and we just don't know. Yes, we can look at our predicted forecast, but sometimes those are super inaccurate. So the best way to know that we got our seeds started in a timely manner so that we get nice big plants before that first frost on November the 14th is when it's predicted to be here. It can be 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after. Is to start them inside. So we're going to start them inside. These are very different than from when we start our spring seeds inside. Our spring seeds inside, we're using heat mats. We're trying to keep those seed trays nice and warm. And we're using lots of grow lights. But our fall seeds are the exact opposite. We want them to be cool, not cold, and not hot, because the heat will prevent them from sprouting. Also, the cold will prevent them from sprouting. So it's really like a time that you have to like narrow down to when to start your seeds. So the easiest thing for us is we're going to start them inside. I am going to use grow lights. I start these on my back porch. It's shaded. It's cooler here than it is, of course, in the direct sun. You can also start them inside your house if you wanted to as well, and that would help speed up the germination process as well, because your house is more than likely set at like 65 to 70 range. Ours is pretty high right now because our electric bill was sky high last month. I'm sure it's going to be worse this month. So I went ahead and put my moist seed starting mix into my trays just because that's kind of monotonous. You wet your seed starting mix so that it's nice and wet, not too wet. And then you go ahead and fill your trays. So I have each of these trays started. Each of these trays is going to be a different vegetable. So I'm doing collards, broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage today. I love these seed trays because they are color coded. And so I can say all of my collard greens are green, all of my broccoli is blue, and then I'm just going to do 2 varieties of each this year. Now, I could go in and do 1 variety of each, but I always try and do 2 varieties just because here in Florida, our weather is super unpredictable. And a lot of times 1 variety will outperform the other variety. Now, which variety each year outperforms? It just depends, because some years we're cooler, some years we're warmer. So I just always choose 2 varieties, not super picky on those varieties as long as they're varieties for the South. And I plant those 2 varieties. The next thing that you're going to need is some labels. These are just like the little markers that you write on with a Sharpie, which would be the next thing that you need so that we know which variety is which. And then I have like a little thing to dig, which isn't necessarily something that you need for planting these seeds because they're super tiny and you can basically just put them on the top of your soil. So we probably don't even really need this today. Now, each of these represents a row in the garden. I'm doing 2 rows of each variety. So if you saw on one of my shorts, I put weed barrier fabric down, which each section of weed barrier fabric is going to be 2 rows. So I will have 1 row, 2 row, and then I will have the next weed barrier fabric to be 1 row, 2 row. So each section of weed barrier fabric has 2 rows, but then I have 2 sections of weed barrier fabric per crop. Hopefully that makes sense. It's my garden, so that's not necessarily super important information. I also have ADHD and do things a little bit different than most people. So let's get started on which variety of collard greens I decided to go with. Now these are the same varieties I will use every single year. I have grown faded. They do well as well. This is also a top chop that's in here that Hoss sent me, but I like Georgia collards and champion collards. Both of these came from High Mowing Seeds. These sell out pretty fast in the season. I don't have a particular specific place where I get either one. It's just who has what in stock when. So we're going to plant the collards in this green tray. So I'm just going to make a marker for each of these sections of seed cells. So Georgia collards. And champion collards. Now, if you've never seen seeds in the fall before, like I said earlier, they are super duper tiny. Now, I'm going to do my best to only put 2 seeds in each of these trays. We can come back and thin them once they all sprout, but I want to do the 2 so that I'm absolutely certain that I got something to sprout in each of these seed cells. That's also an advantage of starting in seed cells, is that I have the exact number of plants I need, and I didn't sow seeds out in my garden that may not necessarily sprout, and then I would have like a big gap. It's just something that annoys me personally, is to walk out there and have like 4 squash plants in a row and then like the next 2 didn't sprout, and so then you have 4 more. It just creates a break. You can always stick another seed down, but just a personality trait thing that I have going on. So now for these seeds, instead of coming back and covering them with soil like we would in the spring, I just kind of take my fingers and push these into the soil. These seeds are super tiny, and so instead of covering them up with soil, I just press them into the soil, and they'll usually germinate that way without being completely covered. The next thing that we're going to plant or seed start is broccoli, and this year I'm going with the Desico. This is a packet of seeds from probably Tractor Supply because it's the Fairy Morse brand. And then from High Mowing Seeds, I'm going with the Bellstar. I grew this variety last year and really liked it. So those are the 2 varieties of broccoli that I decided on for this year. So next up will be cauliflower, and cauliflower is something that takes a little bit more work than all of the other fall vegetables, just because as the heads start to form, you have to take the leaves and curl them up around the head to protect them from the sun here in Florida, or else those nice pretty white heads turn brown. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's just that it was exposed to the sun. So to keep them nice and pretty, we wrap the leaves around them. I take like a little clothespin and clothespin all the leaves around it. It's not a lot of extra work, it's just more work than a majority of the rest of the things that we grow. So the 2 varieties that I decided on this year came from Hoss, and I'm growing Minuteman and then this Twister hybrid. I think that these are the exact 2 that I grew last year. I may have done a Snowball Improved, but one section of the cauliflower didn't do as well. Both of these are supposed to be a little bit more heat tolerant than other varieties, so hopefully these work a little bit better this year. I also had, I think, a nutrient deficiency where like the inside of the stem became super hollow, and I'd have to look back up which nutrient was low that caused that, because I did end up doing a soil test. But definitely got that fixed. So hopefully our cauliflower, it was the only vegetable in the fall I had that didn't do very well, does better this year. Now I'm switching things up a little bit here this year with cabbage. I typically do grow the golden acre, but this year I had a lot of success with the Bronco F1 from High Mowing the last several years, so that's definitely one that's going to be on there. It's not as big as the golden acre as it matures, like the golden acres would get huge. But because here in Florida, sometimes we have super cold weather, sometimes we have hot weather, I found that the golden acre only does well when we have that super cold weather for a really long time. It just gets much larger, and so I'm going to go with the Bronco. And then Haas sent this Cheers hybrid. You'll hear me say, especially in the fall, that I'm growing a lot of hybrids, and that is simply because hybrids have been bred, especially if you're buying some from Haas, for our warmer climate, and so those hybrids typically do better down here. They've just crossed several different types of cabbage until they've perfected one that grows really well down here. So I do like growing hybrids in the fall. Now, the only disadvantage to growing a hybrid is that sometimes when you save seeds, that hybrid originates to one of its parent plants, and so instead of having the characteristics of the hybrid that you're growing, it goes back to the parent plant. So if you're a seed saver, that would be the only reason not to grow a hybrid. But I'm not a huge seed saver. You'll see me save some, but not a ton, and so I'm not technically concerned. And if we were ever in a position where I was saving seeds because we could not get seeds, it would not matter to me what type of cabbage I got, as long as it grew a cabbage. So just something to think about. So like I said, we're going to grow this Cheers, and then we're going to grow the Bronco. Now, Haas does provide, I don't ever use them because I always have seeds left, but Haas does provide in some of their more popular packages of seeds these little seed markers. So if you were planting a whole package, you technically wouldn't have to write your own, but a lot of times I'm only using a partial package of seeds. And a lot of these seeds I've been growing and using for years. Like, it's probably not something most people would admit to, but I've used the same packages of seeds, especially the ones that came with a ton, for years. And people will tell you the smaller the seed, the longer they don't save. I technically haven't had a ton of issues with sprouting, and like I said, I put multiple in each seed cell, so if one doesn't sprout, not a huge deal. Hopefully the other one does, so that we have, I knew that this Bronco was getting low because this is the seed pack that I used last year, but I already have another package of those seeds because I liked them so much. The Bronco came from High Mowing. I don't know if I stated that earlier. They do sell a lot of hybrids. Now, there are red cabbages, all types of things that you can grow. I might come back and start some of those for my in-ground garden as I see that I have space. But for now, I'm just starting all of my traditional, what's going to feed our family, the bulk of what's going to feed our family, vegetables. And you can start these seeds and put them out into the garden anytime between September and December. So It's not like you have to do it right now. It's just to get a head start, to make sure that I've grown enough to feed our family. I like to start early. But you could absolutely start these in November and still get nice size producing vegetables or plants. Okay, so that's all we're going to start today. We're going to order onion plants as soon as Haas puts them on the website for us to be able to order. They're the little starts. It's an onion with a little green head. Those do absolutely the best for me. I haven't had much success. I do know how to start onions and I can get them started, but they don't grow as big of onions as the starts that I buy from Haas or what's the other place that we buy onions from? Anyway, either one of those, Dixondale. So I am going to continue to buy my onions, and then we will also plant our garlic in November. I think the onions usually ship in November also. I just plant them as soon as I get them from Haas. They're really good at sending them when it's time to plant them. So when we put our garlic into the fridge in September, I'll go through the process of how I do that with you guys. We need to start carrot seeds, but it's still too hot outside. That heat would prevent them from sprouting. So we're waiting on cooler temps for those. And like I've said before, lots of rain before we plant those carrot seeds. Lettuce, we won't plant till November, December when it gets nice and cold and consistently stays cold, because any heat spikes make lettuce bolt or turn bitter. So just something to think about there. I think that's all that I'm going to grow for the fall garden. I'm sure there's some other things like you can grow radishes and things like that. So if I left anything out or you have questions about what I'm starting, of course, let me know. Hopefully the seed starting video helps you out. I should probably show you where I'm going to put these so that you have an idea of that also. So let's go put these up so that we have an idea. So this is my, I think they're called like baker's racks or something. You get them at Lowe's. It's just a basic metal shelf. It is on my back porch. It's much cooler here than it is outside, and I will run a fan. If I notice that it's getting too hot out here and I don't think they're doing well, I'll move them inside my utility room on another shelf that I have set up with lights. These lights are Sunco lights. I will try and link them below. I've been using these, I think this is the second year. Remember, I upgraded, so I think this is the second year that I'm using them. Now, because it's on my back porch and because these are fall seeds, I'm not going to worry with lowering my lights down and worry about these getting leggy. There's tons of light coming in here, so if anything, I'll move them as it cools off to where they're in direct sunlight. So I'm just going to set these on this shelf. Now, I don't know if this is as important with the fall seeds, and I definitely don't want these to get hot up under them, so I'm going to open all of the vent holes so that they do not get hot. But I do want to keep a little bit of humidity in these until they sprout, so I am going to put a humidity dome on each of these. Now, when I ordered these seed trays, these little ones, I forgot to order the little domes, but I have these domes from the big ones, and these little trays are just too... like two of them equal the big one, and so these actually go on here perfectly. So I will come in with a mister, just one of these basic pump up garden sprayers, and mist these a couple times a day until they sprout. Once they sprout, we're going to remove these humidity domes. I'm going to run this light just like it's daylight outside, so when I wake up in the morning I'll turn it on. When I go to bed I will turn it off. Now, these vegetables grow when the sunlight is shorter, so if I take a few hours off here and there, it's a-okay. That's also important because you need to know which type of onions we're buying. Here in the South, we grow short day onions. I think I need to reiterate that over and over again because it is so important. We are growing in the fall vegetables that up north they would typically be growing in the spring and summer when the days are longer. So here in the South, we're growing them when our days are shorter, so we need to make sure that we're buying short day variety onions. So that's super important. So I'm just going to come in and mist these, and then this light will run until it's time for me to go to bed. I'll shut it off, and then in the morning we'll turn it back on. Starting seeds is one of my favorite parts of gardening. This is like the it thing for me. I don't even know why I told you I was going to start them out in the garden, because we all knew that was a lie. I love starting seeds, especially on my back porch. It's a lot cooler here right now anyway. So we are starting our fall garden, and hopefully we start to see these temps drop off, because if y'all are like me, I am tired of sweating and I'm tired of paying my utility bill that is astronomically high. So let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully this helps each of you who are just starting out to gauge when you want to start your fall seeds. Like I said, anytime between now and November, December is a great time to start them. In November, if you're starting them later in October, just beware that if you put those tiny seeds out, we do get a hard freeze in November, and it can affect those seedlings. So my theory with starting them early in September is that I get them to a nice size so that when we get that hard frost, I don't have to worry about my plants. You can cover them with a frost cloth, but that's not a guarantee that you're going to save them. So I think that's where I'm going to finally end the video. If y'all need any help, just leave a comment below. I also post some shorts here, and then I post photos and shorts over on Instagram and Facebook. It just got a little bit too hard for me to try and post everywhere, and I'm super busy. So thanks for tuning in. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you need help with. Let me know when you're starting, anything like that. I love to talk to you guys about gardening. Bye.